The Houston Texans, of course, made two pretty crazy moves a week ago that we were reacting to on Thursday night. We were not sure they were going to draft C.J. Stroud second overall. We also were not sure if they were going to take a great defensive player, and they did both. They draft C.J. Stroud second, and then, of course, they traded up to number 3 to get Will Anderson. Earlier today, we played some audio of the Indianapolis Colts reacting in real time to the Texans trading up to that number 3 spot after taking Stroud, I think because they realized that Anthony Richardson, the guy that they wanted all along, was going to be on the board for them. There's an article on ESPN from Kevin Seifert, and it's yet another reason that every single day we get further and further away from the draft. I am growing a little more concerned with what the Texans gave up to go and get Will Anderson, who hopefully is going to be a really good player. Here's what Seifert writes, quote, 2 hours before the NFL draft, no one outside of Houston knew what the Texans would do with the number 2 overall pick. Neither, as it turns out, did the Texans. In the final hours before the pick, the best guess among sources inside the Texans facility was Will Anderson would be the pick at number 2. Ultimately, Texans GM Nick Caserio settled on a way to avoid the either-or scenario. He would do both, no matter the cost. Wow, that's essentially like draft day. Vontae Mack, no matter what.
Yeah. Will Anderson, no matter what.
Really interesting. The Texans had 12 picks coming into Thursday after Anderson was drafted Thursday night. Caserio said in a news conference he'd worked on outlining a deal to send a massive collection of draft capital to the Cardinals for the number 3 pick to select the pass rusher. And then he pivoted to Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud at number 2. What appeared to some to be a brilliant smokescreen and to others a tightly held secret plan was instead a genuinely fluid situation until the moment the Texans picked Stroud, and the moments before the Texans picked Stroud. I can't read. Based on ESPN reporting in the days since. The Texans didn't fool the world. They bid an exorbitant price for number 3, sending the Cardinals the number 12 pick, their second round pick, 33, and first and third round picks in 2024 in the last available moments to circumvent what would have been an agonizing choice. TL didn't listen. It sounds like they did this at the last minute. And that does lend a little bit of credence to my conspiracy theory that the Texans ownership group wanted a quarterback no matter what, and the Texans wanted Will Anderson no matter what, and this was the compromise in the middle. But the idea that this might have taken place at the last minute does concern me a little bit. How much stock do I put into this report? I will say this. I don't know, because I don't believe that anyone actually has any inside information when it comes to the Texans' brain trust. With D'Amico Ryans to this point, with Nick Caserio. You heard D'Amico Ryans on Saturday after the Texans, I think, had made a pick in the 6th round saying, yeah, there's no reason to talk to anybody outside the room. So I'm hopeful that both Ryans and Caserio were able to maintain silence, not just from them, which I think was easier for 2 people, but from all the people that were around them. I don't know that I buy into the idea that there is somebody inside the Texans' brain trust that has a real clue as to what they were doing. But this report from Kevin Seifert does make it sound like they were flying by the seat of their pants. 713-780-3776 to call in and text in if you have a thought on that. You can also join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/ESPN975. OG from H-Town said this, Paul, if Jalen Ramsey can be traded for 2 firsts, then the Texans didn't overpay for Anderson. Here's the problem with that. We've seen Ramsey play. Much like with the Laramie Tunsil trade, we've seen Tunsil play. I think you actually can retroactively sell the Texans trade for D'Amico for Laramie Tunsil as a good trade. I think you can. I mean, has he not been awesome? I would say when he's engaged, he's been pretty good. He's been really expensive, so maybe that's a little bit concerning. And obviously, those 2 first-round picks would be very cost favorable for you. That's what a rookie contract does for you. You get that 5th-year option if the guy actually is working out for you. But I think you can sell the Laramie Tunsil trade in retrospect. But the thing is, with both Tunsil and with Jalen Ramsey, these guys had played well at the NFL level before the 2 trades with multiple first-round picks involved.
The Tunsil one is tough because they've only been competitive for one of the years that they had Tunsil, but that really had nothing to do with them.
It's not his fault, right?
Yeah. So, but that still hurts giving up 2 first-round picks, and then
no doubt,
you're only good for 17 games,
especially when you're really bad
games.
in one of those years, right, Sean? If you're the worst team in the NFL,
yeah, one of the picks was the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah,
they could have had Trey Lance, man, they could have had Trey Lance.
Now that's the interesting thing. that could be where we're at right now. You can spin zone this.
Or Mac Jones.
You can spin zone this as you get a little bit further. If you're a Bill O'Brien supporter, and I'm sure there's somebody out there like, actually, O'Brien knew what he was doing. Like, bleep DeAndre Hopkins. But you can spin this if you really want to. I've said this before. I said it yesterday in particular. I am getting a little bit more and more nervous about what the Texans game.
I think draft night, it was because
draft night was exciting.
It was such a surprise that I feel like everyone, and I have to give credit to him, except Jeremy Branham. Everyone was like, "Oh, yes, they did something.
Yes.
Something exciting, something fun. They got the quarterback and the edge rusher." And Jeremy was the lone voice, being like,
"This could be the worst day,
folks. This could be a day that lives in infamy."
Yeah, like he's FDR and it's Pearl Harbor. Jesus, Jeremy.
But still starting with folks.
You know what's really funny? And I love Jeremy for this. Jeremy came in yesterday. He's like, "Oh, starting to see my way, huh, Paul?" And I'm like, "Damn it."
He's got eyes everywhere.
I am.
You can't, eyes and ears everywhere. You can't get anything past that guy.
I know you can't. You really can't. But look, as we get further and further away from it, I am getting a little bit more nervous. So I'm glad that 2 football voices that I trust, Robert Mays, Dane Brugler on the Athletic Football Show, had this to say about what the Texans did. They have about the same take as me, where I don't like the trade, but the Texans needed to chase relevance this offseason, and this gives them relevance again.
The Texans sent us a message that they are done toiling in irrelevance.
Yeah.
We can hem and haw about how much they spent to go up and get Will Anderson, but this is a team that walked into this draft and said, we're going to get a quarterback that changes the face of our team on offense, and we are going to get a guy that we think can be an all-pro player every single year, year in and year out. We're going to get building block players on both sides of the ball that have people talking about us, even if you can argue with the value and the way that we're going about it. And I understand it.
Yeah, I do too. For where they've been, especially the last couple of years, I understand.
After shooting for 75s on Madden every single time they had a chance to, trying to get yourself a couple of guys in the 90s, even if you had to spend a little bit to get it, I understand it, even if I think that there are reasonable concerns and reasonable questions to be asked about the way that they went about it.
We got to have Robert Mays on if he's throwing Madden references out there. That just speaks so much to me.
That was also that clip was with Nate Tice.
That was Nate Tice. That wasn't Dane Brugler. My bad.
Because I know Nate Tice. Because I'll listen to the Athletic Football Show, and he throws a lot of that was his take about the Texans the last few years, like in free agency and such. It was like, they really hit all the 77s, 76s in Madden. So yeah, we'll effort to get one of those guys.
My apologies to Nate Tice on that. I do like Nate Tice too. It's a good show. They're actually a pretty entertaining football show as far as that goes. That and Around the NFL are the 2 ones that I listen to the most. They kept going, and look, that's how I feel. They chased relevance here, and while on the outside looking in, if you're just looking at it from a strictly how to build a football team up perspective, this was crazy. You have all these picks. This was crazy, but when you factor in where the team has been over the last couple of years, relevance is more important than chasing a championship. Here's the thing. 1 out of 32 teams wins the Super Bowl every single year. And I know that sounds like an obvious statement to make, but the odds are the Texans aren't going to win a Super Bowl over the course of the next decade. Right? You need to get back to relevance and to a level where people care. The Bill O'Brien era was not an era where enough people cared by the end of it. And you know why they didn't? Because they waited so long to go get a quarterback, and then when they got a quarterback, they played in the playoffs, and they lost that game to the Indianapolis Colts, and no one took them seriously after that moment in time. No one did. Even though they won 9 games in a row, they had started off 0-3 that year, and no one bought into them at the beginning of the 2019 season. It's one of those things where even though they had a good year, looking back at it, It's one of those ones where you're like, damn, this could have been the year, and obviously it didn't really lead to anything. Anyway, Mays and Tice continued, and they had an argument about the supporting cast for C.J. Stroud that I found interesting because a lot of people are also criticizing the Texans for perhaps getting in the way of Stroud having the best possible supporting cast around him.
I do think it's a decent situation as far as offensively to drop a rookie QB in.
They've checked a lot of boxes.
A lot of stuff that you are like, you're not scared. We're going like, oh, he's going to get his ass kicked. Oh my God, this is terrifying. Like, what really? The center's going to get beat every play. So even the one hole that they had on the offensive line, they drafted Juice Scruggs. It was a little bit of a reach, but it's still a starting caliber center, I think. And just also,
and I understand that if that's going to be the reason you're making a reach, is to think like, we need a center with the quarterback. Like, this is a guy that it's a big hole. The rest of the offensive line together, come together. Like, if you're going to reach at certain spots for certain reasons, I understand that being the reason.
Yep, absolutely. I like that. I always argue that.
And he went a little bit further after that to say, hey, they got Dalton Schultz this offseason at wide receiver, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, joined John Mechie, Nico Collins. Definitely a bit of a sell job happening there, but you have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. You have Titus Howard at right tackle. You trade for Shaq Mason as well. The offense should be better next year. Obviously, the weapons aren't exciting, and Stroud doesn't have anybody that's a true game breaker. But at the very least, they all understand how to play in the NFL because they've been in the NFL for a couple of years. So the larger point those two were trying to make is that could be good for Stroud to just have consistent, reliable players as he tries to learn things his first year in the league.
Yeah, they have like real NFL players, like Dalton Schultz and Robert Woods to go along with the rest of the pass catchers, and then the offensive line. Like, this is like they're not A+. I mean, to go back to the Nate Tice thing, these aren't 90s in Madden.
No.
But they have enough like real NFL players around them.
They have a lot of 70 to 75s. Yes. Yeah. And maybe, I think Schultz is trending towards an 80, and I think Damian Pierce is in the mid 80s. I think that Laramie Tunsil would be probably like 91. I think
love this Madden talk.
Yeah, Howard's probably an 82.
Yeah.
I would say Shaq Mason's like a 77, 78. Might have been a little bit higher a couple of years ago due to the injuries. And then after that, we'll see. We'll see. But I don't think it's like an absolute dumpster fire around them. And I feel like I could be wrong on this, but Bobby Slowick should do a better job than Pep Hamilton. It's a very low bar to clear.
We thought Pep Hamilton would do a better job than the other guy.
We did. That's true. That's true. Tim Kelly now in Tennessee, by the way.